Hi, I'm Jody,
Hi, I'm Jennifer.
and this is a Beargrass Thunder interview with Metro Council candidate for District 15.
I'm running for Metro Council District 15. I'm really excited about this opportunity. Being on Metro Council has been a lifelong dream of mine. District 15 goes from a little sliver of Germantown. It encompasses all of Schnitzelburg, St. Joseph, Meriwether, University of Louisville, which is their entire campus and all of their stadiums, Churchill Downs, Oakdale Wyandotte, Taylorberry, Hazelwood, a little bit of Wilder Park, Cloverleaf, and Iroquois Park, the park, not the neighborhood. And I hope that I got everyone. Jacobs?
Thank you so much for being here. We're really excited and really think that our viewers would like to know a little bit about what made you decide to run for Metro Council and a little bit about what you want to change when you become a Metro Council person.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been a public servant for over a decade now. So if you were in Jefferson County and you voted in 2016 or 2020, you were voting for me on your ballot as a Jefferson County Soil and Water Conservation District Supervisor. Very long title, but we do a lot of really great work right here in Jefferson County and really helping promote our natural resources, not just countywide, but also in the entire state. And then I'm also the president of the Schnitzelburg Area Community Council, which I've been on that organization for a decade now, but I have been president for 3. And so we run events like the World Championship Dainty Contest. I'm also on the board for Center for Neighborhoods, and that's an organization that I'm wildly passionate about. So I have this love for environmentalism, but I also have a love for the built environment. So balancing the two of those to create this like holistic betterment for communities is really important to me, and also empowering and engaging constituents.
As someone who absolutely loves farming in the urban environment, I definitely love everything that the Jefferson County Soil and Water Conservation District, again, long name but awesome work, has done for the Louisville community. And I wanted to actually ask a little bit about what are your thoughts on the newly revised weeds ordinance that just passed Metro Council?
We worked hard on that, as I know that you all did as well, so thank you. And I'm sure that your viewers understand this, but it is not that weed ordinance. It's a native plant ordinance, even though we would hopefully see, weed getting legalized soon anyways. Yardens are really important. I've had a no-mow yard, and I'm trying to fill it with as many native plants. I have a lot of shade because I have a lot of trees. But this was something that was very important to me to pass, so we could allow people to grow native landscapes, but not only that, but have conversations about why that's important. And so I'm really hoping that as people saw this, they started talking about what that is and why we should be doing. The other part of this legislation, though, I know a lot of people weren't very happy about certain parts of it, such as the 5-foot setback or the opaque fence. And I completely understand. And in a perfect world, we wouldn't have to have that. But I have to put on my neighborhood advocate hat right now and tell you that we deal with a lot of abandoned or vacant properties, ones that are boarded up and are often filled with drug addicts or vagrants, and they usually create a seedy little pocket. And so in order for a neighborhood to go against those properties, there's only 3 things that we can really do. Cite them for litter or a hoarding situation, cite them for graffiti on the property, or cite them for high weeds. And so we don't have a lot of ammunition when it comes to going after derelict landlords. And so I wanted to make sure that neighborhoods still had the ability to go after them. And that's why that's kind of written like that. And I know that people aren't very excited about it, but I want people to understand that we did that for the betterment of communities. So we want Yardens, but we also don't want, a row of properties that are boarded up, and property owners like that really hold the neighborhood hostage in terms of development.
And one thing that we've seen is that if there is a loophole, people will find it.
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely,
for sure.
Yeah. Laws change, so not to say that that's set in stone. We can evolve it as time goes on to make it better, and as we adapt to a more, hopefully, conservation conscious community.
One of the things that we are very passionate about as Beargrass Thunder are Yardens, transit, and two-way streets. And I know that in District 15, there are a lot of disconnected roads and roads that are one-way, two-way, and it's confusing to not only residents but also to the tourists that might not have any idea that the street that they're on changes. So I wanted to ask, how do you view connectivity in District 15, and what would you do differently in your district?
Absolutely. I think connectivity is really important, but also difficult for a district that spans. We were talking a few minutes ago about this kind of middle section that's all U of L and Churchill Downs, and it kind of creates this north and a south, and so not a lot of walkability in our neighborhoods happening there. So I would really love to see some initiatives to create a unified District 15, but in terms of transit, one of the things, and I'll kind of use this as an example because I think a lot of your viewers will kind of understand this. As a Schnitzelburger, I always like to point out that one of the advantages that Schnitzelburg has over Germantown is that we have a beautiful grid. It is flat for the most part, and it's easy to navigate. But when you go over into Germantown, you run into a lot of one-way streets, ones that merge into others. There's the train tracks. That creates a horrible divide between our communities. Don't get me started. But you can see how that really impacts the development of those neighborhoods. And so I really want to make sure that we're making smart streets and streets that work for people. Getting good walkability in our communities. As I've been door knocking, there's been so many places that either lack sidewalks or sidewalks just end. Yep. It's just kind of who decided that this was just like, okay, budget's out, we're going to just clip it here and then, forget about the rest of it. Who did that? But I also think that as we're looking at one of the big pockets of one-way streets is right over in St. Joseph, right by Eastern Parkway and Shelby Street and Preston. And so that's Zanzibar, White Castle. That's usually how people understand that area. So there's an Eastern Parkway road diet that's currently underway. And then there's also a Preston Street corridor project that's going, crossing that intersection as well. And that's a big project that's in the planning phases, and it goes from downtown all the way out to the Gene Snyder. So it's 11 miles of Preston Highway. And so as we've been having these planning meetings, I've really loved hearing all of the ideas that people have. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I support all of them, but I love the ideas that people are, thinking out of the box about. For example, creating a pocket park and shutting down Preston right there. Or since that is off of 65, maybe the pocket park gets shut down, the street gets shut down on Shelby right there. And then how would we divert traffic? What does that look like? But they're all interesting ideas, and they're all ideas that are going to make our community stronger, right? We need more development in terms of affordable housing. We also need more commercial corridors. We need more amenities. And, I love all of our bars and all of our vintage shops, but I would really love a dog groomer, a veterinarian. I know over in Schnitzelburg, my neighbor asks me all the time for a laundromat. Looking at things that provide basic services for, our communities is really important. And, even in something as diverse and as easy to navigate as right here in Schnitzelburg, it's still something that we're lacking and we need to improve upon.
Oh, wonderful. And what I love hearing is that, there is a balance between commuter needs as well as resident needs on these busy streets, especially with the commercial spaces. It's really important to have that balance. What does community mean to you for someone who's been president of Schnitzelburg Community Council, for someone who's definitely had an interest in the Louisville community at large? How do you find ways to improve the community as a potential Metro Council person?
Of course. So last night I was at a fundraising party, and a couple of my neighbors had come by. And when a new neighbor moves into the neighborhood, I write them a little note. I put in my community council business card, and I put in a Schnitzelburg sticker and maybe a koozie if I've got it, if they're lucky. And so I always put that in their mailbox, try to ring the doorbell if possible. But I always feel like that nosy neighbor that's, showing up with a fruitcake that just wants to peek inside, know all the hot gossip. Yeah. But really, I just want to welcome people into the neighborhood and, bring them into the fold to let them know I'm your neighbor, I care, and I'm right here for you. And it's totally fine if they don't reach out, but as long as they know, who their neighbors are. If they need a package off of the front porch, if they need, the stereotypical cup of sugar, hopefully we would be able to provide that for one another. And I think that hopefully one of the positives that came out of the pandemic is showing the importance of community. But also community to me means creating a space where everyone feels like they have buy-in, that everyone's needs are met, and that everyone has access to having their basic needs met. A lot of time talking about green spaces and how a lot of times they're treated as a privilege and not a right, because a lot of our parks, and especially smaller parks and green spaces, and a green space could just as much be a healthy tree canopy. And so a lot of times we're not seeing that in our disadvantaged or vulnerable neighborhoods. And when we have a community that's prioritizing, let's just say for example a tree canopy. Trees help our oxygen, they create healthier soils, they are great at water catchment, they provide shade. Hopefully my trees help me save a little bit on my LG&E bill, and they lose their leaves and let the sun penetrate my house in the winter. I mean, nature is beautiful in that way. But also we need to make sure that we have tree-lined streets. A tree-lined street can increase property values by 20%, and that's incredible. And then also just green spaces really help promote better physical, mental, and emotional health. And why don't we want that for our residents, right? So creating community for me is connecting with neighbors, and then also making sure that we have a beautiful built environment, built a natural environment to support our community members.
Wonderful. And you know what they say about trees, they grow on you after a while. Well, thank you so much for that answer. One question that has come up again and again for people that live, especially in these neighborhoods that are all along Beargrass Creek, is how do you feel about people rebranding the neighborhood? In Smoketown, where we live, we've had realtors call it Greater Germantown. We've had realtors call it Greater Nulu. We've had realtors call it Nulu 2 for the people that were priced out of the original Nulu. And it really causes a tension between investors and residents. So I know that Schnitzelburg, being on the other side of Goss Avenue, sometimes it gets lumped in with other neighborhoods as well. And so what do you think about neighborhood identity?
Absolutely. I spend a lot of time, I'm a marketing professional, and so to me I've always kind of felt it was my job to market Schnitzelburg, because I always hate whenever I say I'm from Schnitzelburg and somebody goes, and I have to go Germantown. And so to me that's a completely separate neighborhood. Even in Schnitzelburg, and I love establishments, and I won't go as far as to name them, but they are called Germantown blank, and they're in Schnitzelburg. And so, that's just kind of a thorn in my side. But I think neighborhood identity is super important, so you can know your community, but also know the history of the community. Germantown is interesting because it is represented by the German Paristown Neighborhood Association. And that's truly two different neighborhoods, Germantown and Paristown. And Paristown is represented by their own neighborhood association. So I've always thought that neighborhood association should probably be more Germantown Neighborhood Association. And then that would be a good place for us to start in, helping create an identity, a clear-cut identity. And none of this conversation is about gatekeeping, making sure that we have boundaries and, like I'm standing at the edge of Schnitzelburg with a pitchfork saying, stay on your side of Goss. That is not what this is about. But it's making sure that people know where they are and also who's representing them. And so I think it's really important for other neighborhoods, and especially Smoketown, for example. It was the first Black neighborhood in Louisville. That's very important, and we need to tell those stories, and I think that that's, starting to happen, especially with organizations like you all, and then the Smoketown Neighborhood Association. So that's really great, and it's great to see you guys advocating on behalf of projects like the old beer place.
The Ice House.
The Ice House,
yes.
Yeah. Like that's getting redeveloped, and I'm so glad that you guys are having a seat at that table so you guys can talk about how they can be engaged and equitable members to the community. So
Yes. Well, thank you. You know, it's one of the biggest things that we've been able to talk about with that community benefits agreement with Ice House is we want to put in a clause that says any marketing they do has to say Smoketown neighborhood, which is a huge deal for us and an absolute win. So thank you for that.
And I also hope that you get Beargrass Creek right there. I've always wanted, and this is a part of that MSDCSO basin. I went to all of those meetings as a support to the neighborhood. I go to a lot of neighborhood meetings, but I also recognize my place as a supporter and not a voice for those neighborhoods. But I really appreciated, there was a fight to get an access point to Beargrass Creek right there. And truly there is, but it's gated right now. I'm really hoping that you guys can help bring more awareness to Beargrass Creek right there. I think people really don't understand our built-in or our natural environment and how that impacts things. One of the neighborhoods in District 15, Oakdale, it has a lot of issues with flooding. And so if you look at a watershed map, the neighborhood was built pretty much on top of a creek, and it's right next to a wetland. And so, you know, if what's the saying, prior planning prevents poor performance. You know, if we had good planners at the table back when, you know, in the early 1900s when that neighborhood was being built, maybe they would have had the foresight to say, maybe this isn't the best location for a neighborhood, or how can we be better, coexist with the natural environment. So
it's a challenge for sure.
It's a challenge, yeah. But we need to make sure that people know what's out there, and you know that nature isn't so far away.
How do you view safety or improving safety in the community in District 15?
I think safety, we always kind of start with police, right? Police, in my view, we don't have enough of them. And I'm not saying that we need highly policed communities, but a lot of times, you know, go in these neighborhood groups on Facebook and you'll see a lot of messages or posts by people saying, I called the police and they never showed up. And so when there's an emergency, we don't have enough police present. I'm trying to do a cyclovia right now, but we can't do it, and those are permanently on hold because there's not enough police to support that program. So, you know, it's just really unfortunate to see that people aren't able to get a police response, or some of our city services or events are how that's impacted by our lack of police. But I also think that when we look at policing, we need to think about community policing. And that, to me, is getting more police officers in our communities, talking to people, going in restaurants, understanding the basic needs. That each division has a district resource officer. And this district resource officer, and if you ask me, every police officer is a resource to the district, right? But this district resource officer is responsible for going to all the neighborhood meetings. They're the point contact for the, you know, a neighborhood to say, I've got this issue, or what do you think about this, or can you guide us on this? And that's them on top of doing their normal job. And so that's a position that's not really funded, and we're lacking for that. Our district resource officer, he's been gone for a year and nobody's replaced him. And so, you know, the neighborhood has really felt that absence in that connection to LMPD, because we need to make sure that we're breaking down the barrier so it's not them against us, it's us working together. And, you know, in that we also need to look at how we can make give police better resources for dealing with people in mental crisis. And so when police pick up somebody, there's nowhere for them to take them. They put them in jail, and then they have to deal with, you know, a mental issue or a mental crisis by themselves in a jail cell. And so we need to make sure that when police pick up somebody, and they have to be able to, you know, de-escalate situations, communicate with that individual, but also figure out how we can put them in a place that's not putting them into a system that's going to always penalize them, but put them into a system that's going to provide short-term and long-term help. I think that police need to be better trained on that, but I also don't think it's their responsibility to be social workers. We need to allow the police to connect people with social workers. And we need more social workers just as much as we need more police. We need more people in metro government altogether. So I think that that's really important. We need to look at who's doing these crimes. Right now it's a lot of youth that are doing crimes, the carjackings, that are doing a lot of the gun violence. And so, you know, we've really failed our youth. And we have not been able to fund programs to enrich them and create youth development opportunities. Youth centers are shutting down left and right. We're not investing in programs like sports or other extracurricular activities that will really help them develop character, learn how to cooperate in a team environment, and to create those skills that's just going to help them throughout their life. And even when we don't have a youth detention center anymore. So those youth are just getting thrown into the jail population. As an aunt, I was mortified when my nephew graduated 5th grade and he had to start riding the bus as a 6th grader, and he was riding the bus with high schoolers. I thought, you know, for an elementary school student to go into that, you know, like how jarring, you know, is that experience? And, you know, that's what we're doing to our children when we put them into the jail. And then we're also putting them into a system, instead of helping them, a system that puts a target on their back. They become a number and they're in there forever, you know? So we need to look, we're failing our youth, point blank, full stop, and we need to be helping them be better. And then another part of this conversation about safety, or even curbing violence, is creating a livable wage, and making sure that people's basic needs are met. Because when there's animosity in the workplace and over paychecks, that animosity is going to spill over into our communities. And you know, like I've struggled with bills many times before, and it's not something that's foreign to me now, but I remember in my lowest of lows, that anger that really built up inside of me. And it's justifiable. But you know, we need to prevent people from getting to that point of anger, and the gross imbalance of wealth in our communities is just unacceptable.
From what I understand, every Metro Council district has what's called an NDF, Neighborhood Development Funds, and a certain amount of money is allocated towards whatever a Metro Council person has a real interest in doing in the neighborhood. So for District 15, what would your priorities be for these annual NDF funds?
Absolutely. NDF funds, I think it's important to note that that bank of money is about $70,000 per year per council, or per district. So when the ARP money was coming out.
And what is ARP?
ARP, American Rescue Plan.
Oh, the COVID funding.
Yes,
okay.
Yes, the COVID funding.
Okay.
When that came out, you know, there was like $300-something million. And I said, well, why don't we give each one of our districts $1 million? That's $26 million out of all of that money. It's just a little dent. And think about how far that could go. Neighborhood development funds are used for things, mostly think of them as like mini grants. So I've written neighborhood development funds for everything from trash cans to murals. Event funding, so the Dainty contest, everything to help us financially throw that event. So it's money that is often vied for through a lot of nonprofits. You have to go to NDF training in order to write an NDF, but it's a one-day training, and I would highly recommend that to people that want to work for this money. But we have to go back to that $70,000. When you have, for example, every Metro Council district has about 27,000 to 30,000 residents. District 15 has 30,000 residents. So we're getting $70,000 a year to help residents. And sometimes that NDF money, there's CIF money, which is also capital infrastructure funds, but sometimes money for public works to pave sidewalks can come out of NDF money. Concrete is hella expensive, so that gobbles up a whole lot right there. So I did an open records request, and I've been combing through the things that the District 15 office has traditionally been funding through NDFs. And I'm not saying that I'm going to go in there and lay down the hammer, but we really need to look at what we're spending that money on and what the return on our investment is. It's something that as I'm president of the Schnitzelburg Area Community Council, and when I came on, I really said, we're doing a lot of neighborhood events. Not a lot of people are showing up. We're spending a lot of money on it, and we already have limited resources, especially in terms of volunteer time. And so I don't want us spinning our wheels doing things that aren't going to either help us fundraise or help the community in a larger way. And instead of maybe an event, and I'm not anti-events, but instead of an event, is there a capital project that we can push through that's not helping people on one day, but helping them 365 days? That might be, planting more trees, putting in more benches, putting in more, trash cans or doggy doo-doo bag dispensers, or what have you. So we really need to be looking at how these are being spent amongst all of the council districts. And I'm also really interested to see, which ones aren't maxing out. If you're a council person and you're not using every penny plus some in that NDF, you are failing your constituents.
Thank you so much for being here on our interview. So our last question is, you get elected, you win the race, the celebrations are over, you finally go the first day on the job, you sit behind your desk. What is the first thing you're going to do as an officially elected Metro Council person?
Bring back weekly recycling. I would say that, but also I'm somebody that loves, when you bring a mess to me, I love to untangle it. But I feel like that was so many of the processes that's within Metro government. And so as a communications professional, I'm really excited to go in and see, what's been done and how we can do better. I am really excited to build District 15 a really robust website that has great information on it, because let's look at the top level questions that people keep asking. So instead of tying up our time answering them over and over again, or feeling like we have to be the ones to directly supply that information, if you want to get a speed hump on your road, I'll tell you, we're going to have a website and you can go and you can see all the boxes that you need to check, and if your project checks all those boxes, we'll move forward. Speed humps, they have to be on a road that's not a state road or an emergency route or a snow route. There has to be speed studies done. Let's provide that information up front so people understand how our government works, and helping them understand some other commonly asked questions. What do I do about an abandoned car? How do I get trash cans? A lot of these things are 311, but just making sure that people have those answers, and they're easy to find and they don't have to go searching for them or send an email in order to get it. And then just making sure that we are able to easily connect people with the resources that they need. There's so many programs within Louisville Metro that are underutilized, and really just making sure that people understand how they can take advantage of those programs. Thank you so much for watching today. I really appreciate it, and I'm really excited to be Louisville Metro's next Metro Council person representing District 15, and I'm really excited to build a better Louisville. I'm really passionate about building safe, strong, and connected communities and empowering and engaging citizens. I really look forward to bringing you all on this journey with me. So please follow me on social media. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can find all of those links on my website at Jennifer Chappell for MetroCouncil.com. If you'd like to reach out to me directly, my email is jennifer@jenniferformetro.com. Thank you so much, and I really appreciate everyone, and please be a good neighbor and keep it green.